So here we are with the first video in the nib grinding series. We are talking about the Architect, but just to be friendly, let's call him Archie. Archie basically is your standard nib with the front cut off to whatever angle pleases you best. There are a couple of ways to do the Architect, but I think the simplest in this case is, let's do it this way. You've got your sandpaper, you've got your ball, and your nib. What you want to do is lay the ball onto the sandpaper at the angle you want to end up with when you're finished. Okay? Let's say, okay, you've got this. What do you do now? Well, you smooth things, but you also grind. The Architect, looking down on it, ideally does this. So you've got your tipping ball here. That flat is this flat. What you want to do is come in and narrow this, because that's going to set your line width for your vertical strokes. By the way, this is not an Architect. This is something later on, maybe. This is the basis of what you're doing. I want you to do one thing for me. Remember this technique. It's going to come in handy in a couple of different places. But now comes the boring part. And I'm sorry, but what we need to do, and I'm going to show you this probably sped up, is make that grind and then start this process. What happens after that process is done and you end up with this is polishing. That's as much feel as technique. And some of that I can't teach you. Some of it I can. And I'm going to try and do that. But in the meantime, let me get some stuff out, get a new nib that's not been ground, and we'll make something. Hold on. Okay, back again. You definitely want to have your magnification aid either on or nearby when you're doing this. I went out and bought basically the same sort of sandpaper I'd like you to use. You don't have to use this. Your mileage may vary. Don't worry about it. So it's useful if you have a feed and housing around to do your grinding with the feed and housing and the nib put together. You don't have to do that, of course. It just helps. So first thing I want to do is establish the angle I want this nib to write at, which is probably right about there for me. And this is where all you're going to get from me is a lot of this for the time being, until that angle is ground in. This could be exquisitely boring for anyone but me. So I'm going to shut up and probably speed this bit up some, so you're not watching me do this and then I'll slow it back down when I've actually got something to talk about. How's that? Okay. Okay, back to actually saying something. I've got that flat where I want it. What I need to do now is on both sides, bring them in to establish that line width. So I'll do that for a little bit and not say anything and speed it up so you're not bored. Here we go. Okay, something to say. This angle is established. But this is 800 grit. If I wrote with this, I could. It's going to be scratchy, and most people don't like that. What you do now, one thing I will mention, when you do your sanding, if you have something very hard, put it under the sandpaper. At this point, we're not looking at really maintaining the curvature of a tip. So a hard surface underneath the sandpaper helps things go a little more quickly. What I'm starting now with 1000 grit is the polishing process. Use lighter pressure. Check everything all the time. It doesn't take much. To change the characteristics of the surface. Going from 1000 to 1500, you can see I've used this before. Again, relatively soft touch. Okay. It's still even. Now I'm going to 3000 this time. And we'll talk about something else with regard to the nib. Anything you leave unpolished has a chance to snag. You don't have to polish the points into cute little curves or smooth them down. That you don't have to. This is me, all right? And eventually, when you do yours, they'll be you. But what I want to do is round that in just a little bit to literally take the edge off. If there are irregularities, you're going to feel them with your fingers. If you can't really, use your thumbnail. There's an irregularity because it's taking up thumbnail. And it is on this side. So this is really nothing more than you'd be doing if you were smoothing a nib out on your own. See, there's a tiny little raise on that part of the nib. Now, if you're using a Jinhao, that could simply be the way it was set. It isn't in this case. And now the game begins, and the name of that game is find the rough spots and smooth them down. This is where things can get tedious as hell. In the knife making world, there's an adage: forge thick, grind thin. So try and keep as much meat on this bevel as you can for the smoothing process, because you might be at this a while and you don't want to take off too much and find yourself in need of another nib to practice on. Remember when I talked about smoothing off points? Wow, that turkey's sharp. So I'm going to speed this up because I'm going to be here a while. So I'm going to bring up something I just did. I went back to a thicker grit because I didn't want to spend a long time messing with the 3000. We've got better things to do. But this top has got to be rounded down. Okay. Now we can go back to the 3000 and probably get some work done. Okay, that's really not bad. So, for the next magical trick, I mentioned lapping film. Lapping film is usually aluminum oxide on some sort of either pressure-sensitive adhesive or plastic backing. So what we've got here, this lovely pink stuff, is 8000 grit aluminum oxide lapping film. This is either your next to last or second to last in the process. And all you're doing is lightly smoothing out the grinding you just did. You want to make sure that you maintain that line width all the time. And it is very easy when doing any of this sanding to change it. So the proof of whether or not you've done something that you want to keep is literally putting pen to paper. And what I just discovered is this burr at the very tip is still there. That's going to make me nuts. So if I can't find it, the least I can do is smooth it out some so that it's not grabbing the paper quite so aggressively. In an ideal world, I'd track it down and kill it. See? Can you hear that? That's the villain. Okay. Ooh. That's nasty. You heard that? I certainly did, and I felt it too. So, this guy, much too sharp. So we do something that is going to look really hideous. And that's it. I think I've almost got him. Almost. Okay, so I'll make mention of another thing. Right now, we're into field territory, where there's only so much I can do in terms of teaching you technique. You're going to have to do this for it to make sense. And you're going to have to do it a number of times. Which is why I suggest buying cheap nibs in a really decent amount. You know, maybe 50, 100. Because I don't know how good you want to get at this. You might just be watching this for fun. Wondering, what is it those Nibmeister people do? Okay, there's a little widgie right down there, and I want to get rid of him. Okay. So we'll go back to the 8,000. Okay, at this point, you either go up more grits, and based on what I bought, I can go to 14,000 if I'm feeling like it, which is this lovely lime green. I'm going to say this in terms of mechanized versus non-mechanized nib grinding. You can really do some bizarre polishing. Bizarre is meaning good in this case when you've got machines. Because in the jewelry world, there are all kinds of fabulous polishing compounds for metals. And it's a lot faster than doing it this way. You could stop at 8,000. You could stop at 6. The last one in my package is 60,000. Do I need that for this? I don't think so. There's a point where it's not so much diminishing returns as it is, are you going to feel that difference? And really, I can't tell you. I don't past a certain point. So I'm going to pretend that I'm Julia Childs here and put down a piece of paper, but pull out another pen that has an Architect Nib in it. So this one's got a slightly different Architect grind, but the point's the same. You have wider cross strokes, then you have downstrokes. I don't know where the Architect design came from. I've heard things like it's based on writing Arabic or Hebrew. That's possible. But I can't say that I know. I think I'm running out of ink, which makes this really embarrassing. Oh yeah, there's nothing left in that. Right. So, yes, there is. It's just being a jerk. It's still being a jerk. Well, there we go. You can't be a presenter without stupid things happening. Like this. Your normal presenter might go so far as to just cut this part out. But that's not me. You little jerk, you. Do you have performance anxiety, Mr. Penn? But he does write reverse. One other thing you should get that I haven't mentioned is a brass or titanium shim for cleaning out nibs after you've done the grinding. Also, wash your nibs after you've done your grinding. In fact, that might be the problem with this guy. So, hey, what's a little life without ink on your fingers? So this is the nib we just used for the grinding experiment. Oh, that's nice. The ink's not flowing yet, but you can feel a lovely little bit of feedback. Let me shake this guy and see if I can get some nib wetness going on. There we go. Now you'll notice that the difference between the upstrokes and downstrokes is fairly subtle here. All you have to do to make that more pronounced is angle the sides more. Or pay more attention to the angle you write with. I tend to change a lot. So but if I keep it dead on where it's supposed to be, you see it improves. So that is the Architect Nib with extra silly things happening that I don't want to delete because it's all part of the game. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please ask them. Keep on writing.